just started the router next door. Good morning. It is cold here. I love cold. It's time for fires. I haven't had my first fire indoor yet, but I plan on it. I'm going to stop the slurring speech now that I can hear myself. Good morning, Melanie. I see that we have music and that Rockfin has decided to play. Hi, welcome to this week. There's an eclipse this week. There's a full moon this week. So much is happening right now. And it's good to be here. It's good to have your witness. Thank you for your witness. A lot to cover. A lot is happening around us all. And in the midst of that, we are exploring and contemplating what all this stuff means. And I thought that it might be a helpful consideration if we were to maybe look at the stairway of conspiracy. I wish I had an organ right now. But the stairway of conspiracy is something that is not talked about. It's ignored. And there's a reason why it's ignored. There's a reason why there's infighting. There's a reason why we behave the way that we do, but insist it is the other guys that are doing all the evil. And that if they would just do the right thing, that my goodness would be allowed to shine. And that's a noble fantasy. It's noble, and we have a different version of the word fantasy here. Fantasy is a power. I haven't actually covered that yet about pretend, have I? But that'll come when it's due. Building up the courage, actually, to give you the religious history of vaccines. We've compiled quite a bit of data on that. It's a doozy. It's such a doozy that it really makes you want to have conversations like this even more, because you're so much more aware of how much closer the enemy is inside you, and that is not something that we want to feel. But we've done nothing but good. So step one, we've made a lot of progress. Step two, the evil that we keep trying to claim is outside of ourselves is actually the exorcismal rite of plasma, where we relinquish our own power into this egregoric conglomerate that then turns around and tries to stick us with needles. And that is a very difficult prana economy to explain to people. Most of that energy is actually invisible, not able to visibate, right? Your eyes are visibating things. They're not showing you the world. They're visibating what you are capable of seeing. That's a new word today, visibate. Pretty happy with that one. Speaking of new words, my audiobook is out. It came out Friday, and you could listen to a copy right now. It is the book Blueprints of Mind Control Books, and it has been read by the wonderful Miguel Connor. I am very, very proud of the opportunity I had to actually work with him on this. Many of you are used to my voice, and you might find it very jarring or discombobulating to hear my words coming from another voice. And I want you to know that that's okay, that I actually think that the audiobook, this is the first time I've ever actually published something, meaning that it's not actually mine. I self-publish my books because I want to own those books. I want those. I put a lot of time into those. The audiobook, the only way that I was ever going to see this distributed on an Audible platform would be by publishing with audible.com, which I'm happy to do. It's fine, but it's not actually my product. It's actually their product. It's publishing world is like the music industry, but just less side boob. It's just as dirty and nefarious, but it just doesn't have the same eloquent electricity as you might picture that a modern rock star might have with their publishing rights. But it's something that I've wanted to stay away from for a long time, which is why I haven't actually been able to publish an audiobook sooner. But I tried to read the audiobook for a year, and if you didn't know this, well, how would you ever think that I write this stuff down? But I do not dictate a script. I do not read from a prompt. I don't know how I would do that. I've certainly read things on air before, little quotes and whatnot, but I will even not read comments because it'll take a paragraph, and the art of me reading something to you is the lack of me. I've evacuated myself into the narrator role so I can read this. I really want the audiobook to be enunciated and understood more than I want people who are familiar with my voice to hear that voice. I'm probably going on a lot about this, but it's just really proud about it. Also, I'm hoping that it would maybe reach people that would never see me through the live stream. Many people who even consider themselves sort of someone who's familiar with me haven't actually read my books. They're not readers. They don't read. They'll listen to a book, but they won't actually read one. And that is me trying to push my steam engine in the world of electricity, and that has failed miserably. But I'm still a writer. I will always be a writer. Words are the most powerful weapon we have. Words themselves, there's no defense to comprehension. There's not a defense against comprehension. If my words are comprehended by you, that becomes a very dangerous grenade that's been dropped into your place. You know that. Some of you have felt that with even following along with what we talk about. That the more powerful and potent that word is, the more damage it does. So these words are I think not only our only weapon, they're by far the most superior weapon that I've ever seen that we can employ, and I'm hoping that the audiobook does that. So I will stop talking about the audiobook, but seriously, I don't do a lot of commercials here. If you've ever valued my work and you're not already a Patreon, because you guys are really the bread and butter, thank you for helping me produce this book because of the Patrons, because of the Patrons, a symbol, form of audiobook. That's what happened, and that cost money. I was happy I wanted to employ Miguel. I did not want to say, Miguel, would you please do something for free for me? No. The dude has the equipment. He's got the time. He's got a great podcast. Does amazing audio work himself. Anyway, you could go to Audible right now and get that book. Not only that, but we are giving away free copies of that Audible book if you can help us spread the word. My goal is to try and find a way to get that audiobook out there, because the only chance you have with audio, I'm really going on about the book, aren't I? But the only chance you have with the audiobook is right when it comes out. That's it. That's the only chance you have. We're going to talk about conspiracy, I swear. Just let me get through this, please. This is important. It's my work, too. It's not even like I'm peddling frozen steaks in the mail. I'm literally telling you, I busted my ass writing this book, and now put in the effort, and we pound it out. It on audio, and now it's available, and you can go. There are 3 reviews already. 2 are great. 1 is like awful. It is like so awful. This guy, you could tell that when he heard the book, it made him very angry. Very, very angry. And he'd said, you could tell this guy's hurt, and it's like poetry. And those 2 things would be, that part is pretty accurate. But you need to see how the breaking happens, how the fracture happens, because of the psychic lessons in these 47 chapters. These are not about me. There might be 1 or 2 that abortion comes with flowers. That one's about me. There's some that are about me, but most of them, Gloria Vanderbilt's in there. The Satanic Ritual of 9/11 is in there. One of my most famous essays, if I might say. Seriously, that one got a lot of traction. The reptilian space pope is in there. There's a lot in there. The folly of relativity. We analyzed 357 star clusters that have been documented that disprove redshift and relativity. That's in there. That's not about pain. I mean, sure, it hurt my feelings, but I wasn't like, oh my God, special relativity broke my heart. Oh, I'm going to write some poetry. But it was poetic because there's a guy and he's in front of a train, and this train goes by and he feels the raw force of this train just shaking the earth around him, and it makes him wake up. And these 47 short stories of what mind control truly is are showing you the mind control at the top of the ladder all the way down to the bottom. The lowliest one of us is just as susceptible to those at the top. And the ones that are the most vulnerable are like that dude on Twitter this morning that says, well, I don't think I'm actually very susceptible to mind control, so clearly I'm not going to ingest this new literature. That was my favorite. That would be its own chapter in and of itself. So, you can go to Audible, you can do a search for James True, you can look for those reviews. If you go to my website, jtrue.com, you'll see a link and click on there. Right now, if you're on Twitter and you're retweeting that article, that enters you into a contest. Melanie's got some things cooking. She might even have something in chat by now. I don't know. I'm going to get on with the show. But if you dig what's going on and you want to consider it, please consider that book. Please consider that book on Audible, Blueprints of Mind Control by James True, read by Miguel Connor, ISBN 746472111. Okay, Stairway of Conspiracy. Is that the name of the chat? Hey, 18 people in Rockford. How's it going, guys? The Staircase of Conspiracy. I wanted to talk about this. But I want to translate it into our time. I want you to remember back when you believed everything you were told. When every story you were inserted, that was inserted in you with words, by the way, that you comprehended, so you have no choice but to let them unravel. That there was a time when you still believed everything you were told. I would like to invite some of you to write in the chat and explain how you were so much more awake than anyone else and that never happened to you. Please, people are waiting. Operators are standing by to praise you with witness about how immune you are to mind control. So let's get that out of the way. Okay. Now, the rest of us that are beautiful humans, just natural humans that have empathy, that aren't psychopaths, that will believe what we're told because we were brought up in a trusting relationship with someone where it became quite natural for us to believe what we were told. It saved us calories, it allowed us to eat. You get it. It's a very natural function to do these things. That there was a time when you were on level 1. When you were at the very, very, very first steps of your journey. And that journey was not too high off the ground. And then any chance you might take to take a step that was above would only be met with the shortest of fall, a simple fall just down one step, back to the floor again. And that you started to do this when you maybe started to question something easy. It wasn't easy at the time, but right now it was easy. That maybe for the very first time you heard a report on CNN about, let's say really, really easy, like Justin Smollett, that dude, like the lynching dude guy, remember him? That you saw something like Justin Smollett, and because it was the very, very first tiny step, you took a step up to view the world from one step above, and you saw a new vista that you'd never seen before. And that was the first vista of doubt. It was the first opportunity for you to catch a lie. And certainly you've seen lies as a kid, but because you were brought up in this trusting relationship, this family unit that you needed to survive, that fed you, wiped your ass, all that stuff, you'd never seen a large lie, that predator had not been shown to you before. And Justin Smollett showed it to you. It's just a tiny little glimpse. And that was a little glimpse because all it really meant was CNN's full of shit, which is not really that hard, right? I mean, that's kind of easy. But it's important. And the people that are watching CNN, when they take that step, they are committing more bravery than you might be able to remember or imagine. And that you might even denigrate now because of where you are, that you might look at that act and still not find the true torque and value in what's happening. And that the only way that you would ever have been able to ramp up is by having these successive levels of steps that you could climb up. That Justin Smollett becomes hard because you know that the next day when you go back to work and your liberal friends who you thought cared about everybody because they were always going on and on about how important Sodomy Month was, or that they were virtue signaling about how they're saving a planet because they paid a surgeon to cut their balls off, or that vegan chick has decided that what's best for her is to eat dirt now. All of these things that we see in the environment are helping us. They're helping us find that level. And the trauma that someone else is going through is actually being secreted and turned into a kind of pollen that you and I are picking up. And that pollen is wisdom. That pollen is gnosis through folly. That the folly of their ways is alchemized and transmuted into gold purely in the furnace of our witness. The crucible of our witness transmutes that rust into stainless steel. And that person who's making that folly in your presence is giving you the deepest form of potlatch, the deepest gift you could imagine. And one of the reasons why it's so deep is because they don't even know they're giving it to you. They're giving it to you so freely and so innocently that it's never something they would ever be able to feel credit for. And if you were to explain it to them, they would be more angry. They wouldn't be complimented. Potlatch itself is a secretion of humanity through anonymity. That your secretion of love for humanity, when it's not for someone you know, but it's for something that you're part of, is a level of love. And it's very similar to these levels, these structures, this staircase of conspiracy, that the lowest kind of love is the recognition that Jesse Smollett is full of shit. That's the easiest kind of love. And I know I've talked about this before, so I hope I'm not being too repetitive. I'll go quick. But the baby has love for its mother because it's paid to. It's the easiest kind of love. The baby is being nourished. The baby equates nourishment with love. That's easy. And as that baby grows, it develops a love for its brother. The brother is not necessarily providing it with care. It's providing it with something else. But this something else is a mutual transaction. It's not a one-way transaction. It's a I scratch your back, you scratch my back. It's a mutual, beneficial kind of love. It's love that has a benefit also paid to it, but it's mutual. I am my brother's keeper. What I do to my brother does to me. It's not the same. You can pee in your mom's face as a baby, and she's not going to hit you. She's not going to beat you up. If you do that to your brother, he's gonna fucking make you pay. These are different levels, see? These are different levels of understanding. The Jesse Smollett is peeing in your daddy's face, right? And then building 7 or 9/11 would be more like brotherly love. It's a step above. Requires just a little bit more from you. Requires a little bit more danger, in fact. For you to fall off the second step is going to hurt more than if you fall off the first step. And if it wasn't for the first step, that second step might not have even been possible. That Jesse Smollett, that people falling for Jesse Smollett is alchemizing in everyone else's mind through their witness by noticing how stupid they are for believing this shit on CNN. See how it works? That alchemizes in me even though I don't really know who Jesse Smollett is. I don't really know even what the story's about. But I've heard the echoes and the ripples come through that I know it's the exact same pattern that's happened before, that these patterns are effervescent in our society. They're everywhere, and they're not everywhere because the world was wired by mere men. They're everywhere because the resonance of this world makes it so. That the fractal itself that defines our reality will always form these steps as you progress up the staircase of conspiracy. Conspiracy, at the very heart, is the power of doubt. It is the very essence of my audiobook, Blueprints of Mind Control. Is that true? People, you'll see that. They'll use that quote a lot. They'll say, is that true? It's because on page 1, very powerful intro ends in that statement. It explains the Ubermensch that rises inside of you, the amount of torque it requires for you to even doubt. That doubt is a special kind of torque, a special kind of secretion that only comes from a very, very tuned man. And that tuned man can only express that doubt because they have an economy of plasma at their disposal. And that they choose to spend that plasma on doubt, that their calories that are burning in their brain, the red blood cells on their suicide mission, only last for about 9 months, right? That they are birthed in your marrow, that the bones of your will are born and placed in the chamber of your heart and charged with the very will of what you want to do. And you took those moments and you said, I declare doubt in this world. And you brought down the spirit of doubt and opened a motherfucking stargate into this portal and created a new beast. And this beast was your familiar. This familiar watched over your back and was constantly whispering in your ears, have you zetetically experienced the truth of what this person is saying to you? And this figure on your shoulder is going to be considered a demon. That the very Greek definition of demon, daemon, is divine inspiration. And that willpower itself is the demon of your ancestors, the Daimon, this always running unconscious spirit. Runs your digestion, it runs all these things that are inside of you, and that this spirit is who you are. And you've been told it's a demon, you've been told it's evil, you've been told not to listen, and that voice ignores it all. It ignores it all and leans in because you gave it calories and said, that story's bullshit. This was a step on a very long, painful staircase that has exceptional views. That the vistas that you find from every one of those steps is so startling, so spectacular, that it will literally shake you to the core. It will change you. That there is a shaking happening around your whole core, and what's happening from that shake is the oscillations are shaking free loose mud and debris, encased, petrified reptile shit that's been covering your skin like scales. And that the attunement of that doubt is a piercing heat that's inside of you, and it's causing this vibration to happen, and you want to see more. That this demon turns you into a creature where you want more divine inspiration, the actual definition of demon in Greek. And that your doubt becomes a liquid plasma being that's there to serve you. And it's there to show you things that you never thought possible. And the things that it will show you will make you feel evil. That when you start to doubt, the very first thing that happens around the water cooler is people start to back away from you. That here you are doubting the Jesse Smollett story, which means you must be a racist. And that they are seeing the demon in you. They are seeing the divine inspiration of who you are, your intuition. Hey, Melanie, let me know if people are freaking the fuck out because I'm using the word demon in chat. I'm not going to say I'm going to change, but just let me know. This experience that you have now with your intuition on your shoulder scares the piss out of people. It scares the piss out of Puritans. Now, a Puritan is not someone who's pure. A Puritan is someone who feels pure based on the ratings of those around him. That Puritan itself is the measure of what thy neighbor considers pure about you. And that is a turning inside out. That you've turned yourself inside out at this point because you were looking to the world to define for you what is good, what is proper. And we've masked this idea in something called the greater good. And the greater good is the most elegant, beautiful prom date you could ever have. She's dressed in the finest chiffon. And that Chrysler LeBaron convertible that you drove up on Cameron Hill has all the stars out at night. But it's not true. And this demon that you have in the trunk is telling you she already gave her virginity to someone. She was lying. Okay, that was like very personal story. But these journeys that we make are never easy. And when you start to look at what makes them uneasy, you understand why people demonize anyone who doubts. That it becomes easier to doubt anyone who doubts than it does to take that step up. That those at the water cooler who still believe in Jesse Smollett are manifesting their defenses by saying, well, you must be a racist if you doubt that story of Jesse Smollett. And that what they're literally doing is they are pushing you up. They're elevating the initiate to the next level. And the pain and awkwardness you feel now from not fitting in is you being raised up like Hiram Abiff to the next step. And you don't like it there. What are you doing? You had brethrenship with them, you had kinship with them, you had fellowship with them. Everything was great. And now you're the outsider who's suffering a demonic possession of the intuition. And that he is doubting the very core, the very fiber of our puritanical society of truth. That we are raised in the religion that the voice outside you can never be wrong. And that we are raised under the deaconship of regurgitation is education. And indoctrination is purification. And purification means you're okay. So there is a prophet at the bottom. That at the bottom lies a universal feeling of moral good and of selfless acceptance and love. That no matter who you are, we accept you and love you. That the very least that could possibly be required of you is not even required. And that if you remain on the floor, on the checkerboard, on the black and white squares of this hall, that you will find the most self-love and the most comfort there, and that there is no danger of falling from a step because there's nowhere left to fall. That you've reached the bottom of the pit, and that the holodeck is there to provide you with a space to survive. Stepping up through these structures cannot be easy, because if it was easy, everybody would do it. And if everybody would do it, you would no longer have a hermetical path to gnosis. You would have a paved walkway the elevated pathway, right? Come experience nature on our elevated boardwalk. So you don't actually have to touch the nature, but you're in it. These people are not cowards. No more than you are a coward, even. These people are making transactions for their own survival. And we forget how far we came, and the only way you can remember is to look at how far you came, is to notice what it took to get you up that next step. And the only reason why you decided to leave the black and white checkerboard of the floor is because you couldn't handle it. It was too painful to pretend that shit was real. That's what I mean. And that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, your prana suffered, that your economy suffered, that you had a deficit, that you were living in a deficit there because you were going back to the water cooler every day and it was draining you while everyone else was being fed from it. That the well that you thought would never run dry had run dry. And you can say that you reached for the higher level because of how magnanimous you were, or how noble you were, or how much smarter you were, but no. You actually reached for the next level because it was too uncomfortable to stay where you were. And this is a more honest approach to what man really is. That we are creatures of comfort, and thank God we are. Thank you, God. Because if we were not creatures of comfort, none of us would be able to compassionate each other. That none of us would be able to understand each other because we would all be wired in different ways. But we're not. We value comfort. The very meaning of what we, you and me, right now in this theistic world, because we don't all adopt animism right now, yet have this definition that life itself is simply that which expresses comfort. That you know something's dead because you poke it with a stick. And you know if you poke it with a stick, that thing will say, hey, that's uncomfortable. And it will show you it's alive. It will express its discomfort for you. Why? Because it is a comfort-seeking entity. And it seeks comfort because comfort is survival. And you should seek comfort too. And you've been brought up in this puritanical society where you're not supposed to seek comfort. And thank goodness, because maybe it will make you look at the puritanical society and say, this is full of shit. That selfless looks exactly the same on paper as evacuation. Those two things are exactly the same. And the greater good is really waiting for the number of villagers that come through with torches and deciding that they know what's best for me. That's what the greater good literally means. But you only know that after you've evacuated yourself and gone all the way over to that step and seen its vista. And the failure that you made by making such a poor decision, just as I have, is liquid gnosis to anyone who witnesses it. But we hide our gold from other people. We hide our failures because we don't want them to see them, which means we deny access to all that alchemy, that transmutation. And that you would feed your neighbor simply by doubting in front of his presence and letting him witness whether or not you doubted correctly, or let him witness how expensive it will be to continue doubting. That even that teaches him where he's at. It shows him, I'm never going up on that next step. And he creates that witness canon for anyone else to see. You see this now. QAnon. You see this now in any belief system we have. The war with China. The Chinese virus is even the same thing. We have these notions that come with these subservient notions, and those subservient notions are really what we're after. That it's those sub-beliefs that we really want. And we can't bring them directly out in the light because that would cause these demon doubts to come down and eviscerate all this harmony. And so people react to this. The ignorance that you see in this world is not a sin. The ignorance that you see in this world is pure virgin snow. That the first step is ignorance. The very, very first step is dimensions. It is the concept that there even is something to doubt. That's level 1. And on level 1, your main power is going to be ignorance, amnesia. And that these are not flaws in you, these are gifts from God, that amnesia was a gift given to you. Because if you were born with the memories of everything that you've had, of every epigenetic thing that's happened, even though you are, but if they were brought to your memory and rendered in your eyes, you would start out having a very, very bad time. That you need that innocence because you're making a pranic equation, a thermodynamic equation with the world over what you're willing to accept and render in your eyes as true and what you're not. And CNN is that level 1. It's so ridiculous that it makes the step obvious and simple, but has such a threshold of comfort to it that it stops those who are not ready from accidentally stepping up. This is the true power of a rapture. That this rapture that we're watching now is seriously a giant game of Tetris. That we are being moved and placed in such a way to where there's no way this could be an accident. The staircase of conspiracy. The very first step is white. It is the same rules that we have with our belts and dojo when we talk about psychology and the movement of your energy. That you embrace ignorance as a shield to just stop the burning, searing truth of reality from burning your eyes out. You're 4. You don't need to know that all banking is based on fraud. You don't need to know that the only way a currency could ever succeed is if it had fraud underneath it. It's just true. You don't need to know that because so many people in the world don't have the ability to produce their own employment, that we have to have industries that are completely built on top of propaganda and bullshit. That culture itself is a bunch of ants clinging to each other's back, and they think they're crossing a stream, but they're not. There's no sides. It's just water. And the only way they can stay up is by lying to each other about how this is land. No, I'm just stepping on a bunch of guys, but underneath them, it's totally land. And that this constant movement is the only way that ant would survive in a rainstorm. It's the only way it would happen is by creating that bubble of ignorance and simply going with it. That if everybody was to scatter, everyone would be lost. And that itself shows you the truth of what greater good is. Greater good is a reality bubble that has power. And the reality bubble that comes in and shapes you the most is going to define what it is. And you can see this or you can't. And that decision will not be based on how intelligent you are, quite the opposite. It'll be based on how indoctrinated you are and how much you feel that you've invested into the system being real. That's ultimately the litmus test. Is the ones that take the step did not invest nearly as much as the fucktard who went to Cornell, got $200,000 in debt. You think he can afford to doubt this system at that point? How is that possible? Where do you even begin? There is zero absolution from student loans. Let that witness alchemize you and let his potlatch be revealed. That what he's committing is not stupidity. He's committing sacrifice for human growth. The next step up from white is a yellow step. It's the step of fear, and you see this everywhere. The second you enter the truth movement, you start freaking the fuck out. And you read these stories like in Blueprints of Mind Control, now available in Audible book, read by Miguel Connor. And you start to read these stories about the elites, about the Vanderbilts, about the Rockefellers, about all these things. And it scares the piss out of you because you're starting to see the world for what it really is. And you're starting to understand why white was so effective. Why down on that first step was so much better. Because it was just like Justin Smollett and shit. That was it. It wasn't like we were manufacturing global wars and literally committing homicide. All to support lies about a petrodollar that's based on the idea, a myth of an energy crisis, when all that oil, all of it, 7 trillion barrels of oil is just sitting there, natural crude, and that our taxes are paying to keep it from us. That step is a hard step. And that step, if you only have so much energy to take that because you're new to staircases, and that staircases themselves are hard for you, that second step is a big fucking deal. But no, if you're on step 10, you're going to look at that idiot on step 2. Look how slow he is. He's not slow at all. He's forming a miracle. That dude's performing a miracle right in front of your eyes. That you're seeing the very first steps of a child that sees past the first dimension and starts to see the power of 2. The power of Hegel. The power of a dialectic itself is not inherently evil. That the idea of heading towards one way and seeing the folly and then heading towards another way and seeing the folly doesn't have to be a trap for cattle. That if you're rational and you have enough calories, you will simply see, wow, look how easy that works. This is a divining rod. And that the Hegelian dialectic is not guiding people. That the divining rod is showing you where the people's current will go. And you don't pick those dowsing rods and wherever you walk on the land, water suddenly magically appears because you held dowsing rods. It doesn't work that way. The dowsing rods show you where the natural current flows. And the natural current flows naturally. It wasn't written by a bunch of hermetic dudes who wore aprons, lambskin aprons. But that this shit is built into the fabric of reality. That your understanding will go through a white phase of ignorance. And if you save up enough calories and if you spend your energy wisely, if you don't throw it away on puritanical demon hunting, if you don't burn all your calories on Justin Smollett stories, that you could spend those calories on something more. And you ask what? And the answer's fear. And you're like, fuck that, I don't want to spend it on fear, which is why so many sheep remain where they are. And this is a good thing, because we only want the people to make it to the yellow step who want to be there. We want consent. We don't want people on level 2 who are terrified and feel like they were forced into this. That is not how you awaken a flower. The flower tells you it wants to get up. That's the only way it works. So you need these systems in place to allow you to rise. And if you spend your fear wisely and discernedly, it's very easy to do. You start to notice that the Leviathan has certain characteristics, and these characteristics allow you to actually know exactly. You could passionate your enemy on the mat because you understand how he feeds. And you know that the Leviathan is not vengeful. No, he's not. Stop saying that. It's much colder than that. The Leviathan is cold and methodical, not vengeful. That's what makes it so sick. If the Leviathan was vengeful, we'd enjoy this more. But it's not. It's not. It's a machine. A machine doesn't wriggle its fingers together and go, ha ha ha, I'm going to commit evil now. It doesn't happen that way. It's an absence of compassion. To kill someone because you think they're evil is the most compassion you can feel. You are full of passion for that act. If you spend your fear wisely on level 2, that second step, dimension 2, if you play your prana economy right, you notice that you have more energy than just fear. That you now have an abundance, that you are now 100,000-aire, that you have achieved a level where fear is not necessarily what you're in the market for anymore. And that next step is red. Your fear is now anger. That you have an anger in place now at this system. And that you're transmuting the fear into anger. And that fear rose out of your ignorance. So you're seeing a white to yellow to red movement, a transmutation up a staircase of sorts, up a spine of sorts, taking you somewhere higher. And that anger, which society condemns more than fear, that we show more comfort for those who fear things. But if someone's angry at the system, that's completely intolerable. That anger itself has its own initiation. That if you were to enter yourself into that realm, that not only do you lose the Justin Smollett's at the cooler, but you actually lose your job entirely. That you just simply cannot fit in that atmosphere. That you need something that's more physical, that's more outdoors. That you find yourself not even capable of standing on that step, and you need to go higher. And you need to look at this third level, which is the triangle, the third dimension. All of that power is there. The fire triangle, 3 fuels, right? Fuel, heat, oxygen. Anger. What is that? The fuel of your ignorance. The heat of the oxygen of your ignorance. Making this up as I go. And the fuel of your anger. That those 3 things create something that wasn't there before. They form a triangle. And every single illusion that's broadcasted to you on the screen looks like a triangle. That every 3D rendering engine that runs its game, that every single illusion that you've ever seen only requires a triangle, only requires 3 points in space with a transmutation between. And that even anger doesn't cut the mustard. That even on this level of anger, there's more. And I think most of us on the truth movement who come into the conspiracy staircase will remain on level 1 and will remain fearful, and they will do that because it feels good. They will not do that because they're tricked. They will not do that because a secret outside force fooled them and that they were innocent. No, that they will make a sovereign, powerful decision to remain in that yellow belt because it's too uncomfortable to go to red. That anger has been shamed too much because anger is action. That when you're angry, you have no choice but to act. That torque is so strong that you were forced into expelling that way, somehow, some way. Each of these steps is more prone to accusation, and each of these steps send you down a place of solitude, that you enter into an initiation with yourself, and that intuition, that demon, that daemon, that divine inspiration is the only thing that's with you the entire time. And so you start to use your senses. You have all this anger, you have all this energy, you apply it where it goes. You start to listen more, you start to see more, you start to feel more, you start to smell more, you start to taste more, you start to understand the true nature of reality. The columns, the structures that it's built on, the Tuscan columns, the Doric, the Ionic, the Corinthian, the composite. That we build things on things that are fake as much as we build things on things that are tradition, and that there's an entire spectrum in between, but none of them are the top. That none of them are even reality. They are simply the same structure as the pyramid. That if you have enough energy to go past your anger, you start to build things. You start to build something called compassion, which is green. And this is the hardest for people to learn because you think automatically if you have compassion, you're consenting to what they do. That James thinks that no one's evil. He has compassion for everyone. And that's just bullshit. And it's a great argument. It's a very yellow step argument to make, because you made an assumption about me saying there's no evil and an assumption about the compassion. And it's cool. I think that that's actually a natural. I'm doing the same thing. I'm creating a step to see who has the capability of comprehending this more and who doesn't. Because I can't go on explaining if we have all these yellow belts here. It's not going to work. And when the yellow belts start hearing... if you can hear me, just hang on. Dang it. Oh, fuck. Ah, shit. I think maybe... Does this other camera work? Razor? How's that? You think that if this... You think that if this yellow belt works... That's got to be making you guys sick. You think that if this yellow belt... I can't remember what I was talking about. When we get to that third step... When we get to that third step right there... We start... Let me quit this. Please just let me keep going here, buddy. Please just stop quitting on me. You think when we reach this third step that that's it. And it's not. The fourth step's the hardest step. Because the fourth step, you start to have to learn self-enunciation. For the very, very first time, you've had the crutch this entire way of there being evil outside of you, which has allowed you to not have to stare at what's inside. That you've been freed from that entire experiment because it's allowed you to save calories. And you have things like Luciferians or Freemasons or the liberals or the globalists or the Republicans. You have all these groups that you get to say are the evil ones and you're the good one. And that place when you're caramelized in that anger is where most of the yellow belts listen to red belts right now because they're feeding them that information, that gnosis, that ability to stay. The entertainment on the yellow deck today will be Luciferians, why they're the cause of everything that's happened. And that they are trying, these people, whether they know it or not, they're using their resonance to try and promote you into red belt thought. Because that's your next step. And that's good. That we would be doing better if more of us were angry and less of us were afraid. It would be more successful. And I don't know a lot of people that are on the green step. I don't know a lot of people that say what I say because of how fucking expensive it is. At the moment you start telling people evil is not what you think it is, they think that means evil isn't real. And I'm telling you that this notion that you have about what you think is evil is not real. Because you're misunderstanding the thermodynamic equation. That we have painted in us this idea that there are evil people that work out at the gym. That they're so evil, they go to the gym 3 times a week and they get enemas and they have a tailor and they're American Psycho and they're super rich and they just fuck all night and say, God, I'm evil. Look how evil I am. And some chick's like, you're so evil. You're so evil. And that's the most retarded thing I've ever heard next to all the shit that I heard down there on White. It's retarded. And you're wasting all that precious red energy when you could be compassionating. But you're not going to be able to compassionate if you think for a minute that it means we're up here forgiving people. Are you kidding? Motherfucker, green level is all about ownership. All you're going to do is own stuff up here. That's it. That's the only choice you have, is to own it. Why? Because you understand that the reality itself is based on pillars that could be fake or real. That the columns that form this society, that form my very senses themselves, are in fact compassionated through my amygdala. And that the very truth of what they are itself is not the deeper reality that's inside me. And I'm not telling you to deny your senses. I'm telling you to immerse even further and do the math. And you will start to notice why different people render different realities, because it's the only thing they can afford. And when you have that much compassion, something amazing happens in you. It doesn't make you forgive anybody. It makes you start to see where you've limited yourself in the same way. And the moment you tap into how you're limiting yourself, you start to hunt not Luciferians, not Freemasons, but victimhood. You start to hunt how convenient and profitable it is to bitch out, to wuss out, to be afraid or to be angry is to bitch out when you're on the green step. When you're on the yellow step, to be angry is progress. Good for you. I'm calling that morality. You just secreted morality, my friend. Way to go. If you're a white belt and you decide to get afraid, congratulations. You've just secreted morality. You've just done something powerful. You secreted that witness so someone else could see that, and now they are better for it. But if you're listening to this idea of an objective, higher good outside of your self-morality, moral code, you are listening to the fucking machine. And the only way you're going to feel good is by judging every single other person that doesn't agree with you. And I don't care if you want to spend all your time judging. I don't care, because judging is good. We need to judge the world more. But you can't pretend like you're saving the world while you're wasting this much electricity. Because demonizing someone else like that is wasting electricity. You can take your opponent down by compassionating him. Mike Tyson had more compassion for his opponent than anyone else in that hall. Mike Tyson was witnessing that jaw. That jaw was Mike Tyson's deepest passion. And he tracked that jaw like you would track the most beautiful woman in the room. He found compassion for that jaw by understanding how much it would fucking hurt if he destroyed it. Compassion is not what you think it is. Compassion is a 7-dimensional sonar that transmutes time and space itself, where you plasmatically create and simulate a living motherfucking human in your holodeck. Excuse my language, Laura, I know you got a kid in the room. You compassionate your enemy and you build him with such profound, precise accuracy that you now can read the future, because you know exactly what your opponent's going to do. And that kind of foresight does not come from wasting your electricity. It comes from focus. And it's funny because the jungle itself teaches focus. It teaches focus so much that a bunch of lazy-ass yahoos decided, let's build a fence. Let's call it a fort. And let's pretend that Predator is not inside. And there's where all your energy goes. And you're not compassionating the jaguar. You're not compassionating the panther. You're not compassionating the snake. You're pretending that you're a Puritan and everyone around you is civilized. And so this staircase that you see is a life preserver. That the essence of this entire journey was laid down like a helicopter from a Coast Guard, rescuing you from a pulling ship. And that these things that you see in the world are helping you. And that Building 7 was a Christmas present. A Christmas present. That they gave you that building for free because that, just like you express your love for your mom or your dad by peeing in his face, just like you express your love for your brother, that you express your love for humanity by showing them things they don't want to see. You can call that wrong. You can call it evil. It doesn't matter because it's still nature. And that everything you do is natural. And everything they do is natural too. And none of us can be that arrogant to claim that we are the only thing in nature that's capable of breaking free of nature and actually behaving in a way that's unnature. That's arrogant psychopathy to even suggest that. These things that we're doing here, all the vitriol, all the pain that you see in the world, is constructive. And I know that because it's all consent-driven right now, all of it. That a very special mitosis has been built, a very special stair structure has been laid in place to where no one taller than this line gets to ride this ride. That you do not get to go up on level 2 unless you can afford a ticket to be afraid. And you do not get to rise to level 3 unless you have the money to feel anger. Reality itself is tuned just like you are. Humanity itself has built into it. Built in. It wasn't made by Masons. This is built into reality. All this vitriol is an initiation program, and you can take it or leave it. But once you see that the world you create itself is not something you can rely on, you start to raise again. That you start to look at grammar and rhetoric and logic and geometry and music and astronomy as creationary tools, not explanatory tools. Guys, the reason why astronomy is at the top of the list is the same reason why no civilian is allowed above 50,000 feet. That the Hermetic secret society is broken down by threshold, inside threshold, inside threshold. And that's how you build a circuit of mystery. And that evil itself, Satan itself, could be a curtain. Nothing else. A curtain with a person outside that curtain telling you Satan's inside. And that person telling you, you can protect this world if you stand outside my curtain and tell them that Satan's inside here. And that same process keeps happening over and over again. And it's an Amway scheme. It's a giant Amway scheme to surrender. And it's a healthy surrender. It's necessary because some of us can't hack it. These are staircases. You get high up, these can get hurt. And the more lies you find, the more current you have to draw. Because you, just like you compassionate your opponent, you have to compassionate your own reality. That you have to get up and remind yourself of what reality really is and forge it from your own bubble. And that's why there's Republicans and Democrats. That's why there's this two-party system. It's because there are people out there that cannot render their own video game. That they need someone else to render the triangles for them because it's just too much work. It's too much work. They'd like to get better, but this is the tutorial. They're not sheep, they're new. Or slow. But you're slow too. And this isn't even a race because once you get to the top, I don't necessarily think you ever do. That as we start to unlock this Eye of Ra stuff, if you start to understand what the amygdala is really doing, if you start to understand how reality itself is going to be shown to you based on how comfortable you are or how uncomfortable you are with what's inside it. And that is the biggest definition of reality. It's not media, it's you. That you define reality so much more than media ever could. That you have a much more powerful paintbrush than that. And you'll paint me as someone who's out of touch because I think evil doesn't exist. And that's the only choice you would have right now, to leave this step and say, fuck this place, man. This guy's talking about how composite columns make up reality and how we can make up our own shit. And there's no way that's true. And it's because you've never once considered that 375 star clusters that disprove the entire red-blue shift inside Blueprints of Mind Control and audiobook are showing you something you don't want to see. That thousands, nay millions of people will methodically believe something simply because they're told. Why? Because they never ever had the calories to ask, is that true? And that's not a flaw. It's a thermodynamic equation. We judge those in the grocery store who buy Pop-Tarts instead of red peppers. But if you were in their cockpit, you'd buy Pop-Tarts too. You have $2.58 in your account. And you can buy a box of Pop-Tarts, and that is 6 Pop-Tarts. 3 separate sealed bags that cannot be eaten by the roaches at home, that can be hidden safely in your locker at work and no one would steal them. That is something that you can have, but not red pepper. And if you were to buy the red pepper and play this bullshit game that there's only one morality, that you would have a red pepper that would fucking go bad. And if you tried to eat it, you'd have gas all day because you didn't cook it. And not once did it bring you any pleasure or nourishment at all. And you wouldn't be better for it. You wouldn't be healthier the next day. All you'd be is you'd be able to walk into the break room and have some other shitbag tell you, well, you're maybe not as immoral as I thought you were going to be because you bought a red pepper. Now, you buy Pop-Tarts because it's what you could afford. You buy fear because it's what you could afford. You buy anger because that's what you could afford. You buy compassion because I've been saving the fucking money, yo. I put it in crypto. Or I decided this, or I invested in this, or I quit buying this, or I quit going out on weekends. Now I'm ready. And you can afford the pan it takes to even cook that red pepper. You can afford the place it takes to store that equipment, to have that electricity on. Neither one of those is moral. In fact, the person who's at the bottom who's buying Pop-Tarts is secreting more morality than you if you're living the good life and all you do is buy a green pepper or a red pepper. That the amount of leverage it took for them to even feel the need to sustain themselves is the most essential form of self-love we have. That's why survival is so important. Because at the very base root of it, survival is self-preservation. And self-preservation is the vibration of self-love. And so at the heart of it all, no matter how hard it gets, those who want to survive are demonstrating their desire for self-preservation, which is a demonstration of self-love, which means that the world is constantly secreting from them proof for their own eyes that they are loved. That they're loved so much that they're going to go in and be judged and buy some Pop-Tarts with an EBT card. Because that's how much they want to survive. The heroes of consciousness are not Alex Gray, the dude who's painting the beautiful paintings with all the consciousness shit. That dude wears a mask every day on Instagram. No. The conscious warriors are not fucking doing ayahuasca. Nothing wrong with ayahuasca. Do ayahuasca. But the conscious warriors are in the fucking cities. They're in third world cities. They're in gangs. They're living on the edge of Somalia. And that their consciousness is so much more powerful than yours that they can hold a reality bubble in the middle of the worst suck and worst shit you could ever imagine. We've got it backwards. And no one has to climb this staircase. That's what makes it so honorable. That's what makes it so important. That we are sharpened like the stone. And that these staircases are our initiation. I'm not a Freemason. I've never been to a Freemason meeting. I've never been to a lodge. I've probably like walked into a lodge once because it was like a tour or something. I've never been invited to a Mason meeting. I was in a fraternity in college, but that lasted 6 months. I was thrown out because of religious differences. I'm not a Freemason. I'm telling you that there are archetypal crevices built into the architecture of this world. The terrain map has seams, and that those seams have steps. And those steps you can climb or not. Or not. And if you think this whole idea of climbing steps is awful, just blame the Freemasons for everything. But we are sharpened like stone. And no matter where you go in the world, these stones are sharpening us. No matter how you look at it, they are. This is the nature of reality. You are looking at predator. And you can blame me, but it's only because you see me compassionating it and you think that that means I'm consenting. And I'm telling you how to survive. The only way to survive is to compassionate your opponent on the mat. Look underneath the veil and see what they're trying to do. Understand that BlackRock and Blackstone Group and Black Cube, that all of these industries promoting environmentalism, defending Harvey Weinstein, the largest capital asset owner in the world, BlackRock, and then Blackstone, the largest liquidation company in the world, and then Black Cube, the largest intelligence company in the world. That whether you want to admit it or not, and whether you like them or not, it doesn't matter, because the system itself is sharpening your stone. The very principles of Freemasonry. Lies cut. Lies cut over and over and over again until all that's left is the perfect stone. You can call that process Luciferian, you can call that process evil. You can call self-betterment evil. You can call people running the world and trying to better it evil. And I'm okay with that. Why? Because they are fucking with you. And anyone who's fucking with you, you get to call evil. But I want you to know that it's no different than being a chickadee hanging out in front of a bird feeder and complaining because all these birds keep fucking with him. They're not fucking with him. He's standing right there where all the food is. That's it. He can move if he wants. But man is just as much a succulent as he is a human being, that we like to dig in. So, I'm not saying forgive them. I don't think that any group will ever hold morality. I think it's wrong to think that. We dismiss our own morality by suggesting a group can even possess morality. A group is a corpse. It's a corporation. It's a dead thing. Dead things don't secrete morality. Even a dead thing that sponsors a sodomy month is not moral. You're not secreting morality by having a program or spending money. That's not morality. Morality is a very, very special thing. And it's only going to exist under the principles of potlatch. That the truest form of reality is going to be secreted from you anonymously. Which means you're not going to know it. Which means it's going to be you showing your ass in public. You having that toilet paper strand attached to your feet. You showing your butt crack to your mom while you're fixing her plumbing. That's morality. Because they're seeing their humanity inside you. And they feel that their humanity must be okay too. Now, some of you need evil. And I know that I'm making that expensive for you. But that's what's on this level. That all of your energy will come from you no longer exercising it into this demon that you think is the cause of all your problems. And that if you really want to look at what a hermetical system is it's that. That these steps, let me see if I can go back. That the steps that you're waiting on are the trivium and the quadrivium. The pure instruments of rhetoric itself will get you where you need to go. And it will never be in an objective, external myth of morality. Mark Passio, I have a lot of respect for. I think his episode on morality is out. And I encourage you to let it sharpen your stone. And I encourage you to look at that and consider some of the things I've said, and you'll understand that you're just looking at a Puritan-esque morality versus a humanitarian morality, a utilitarianism, pragmatism morality, which is what actually works. The Masonic steps are there to work. That's why the yellow step isn't wrong. That's why the red step isn't wrong. By the way, those aren't Masonic terms. Those are my terms. But using anger is not wrong. Using fear is not wrong. Using ignorance is not wrong. That these are thermodynamic equations that you're watching your fellow man make, and they could be some of the most moral decisions you've seen once you understand their history, once you understand how far that person had to come to even be mad. The courage it took for them to even alchemize that much anger is truly heroic. Now, the Masonic system, don't know shit about it. Don't. All I know is that these steps that I'm defining to you are built in to the fundamentals of this life. And they're unavoidable. I don't see a way around them. And so to me, it supersedes the Masons. It was either there before them, I don't know. If you're asking, well, why are they fucking with us, James? Why are they fucking with us? I think we underestimate how fucked up we are as a collective. That when you're watching a bunch of people play those different levels, from ignorance to fear to anger to even compassion, and there's more steps beyond compassion, by the way, but you have to come to Dojo for that. But if we didn't have these Masonic systems in place, like NASA, that the amount of bullshit would be 11 times more. And if you don't believe me, I want you to look at circumcision. I want you to look at how long that stayed as something that we did, and how we insisted that it was for sanitation or for penis cancer or for whatever the fuck else. And I want you to look at our propensity to find demons in each other, to burn herbalists, to do whatever it takes, that we will run ourselves ragged and create a retribution economy very easily, where your epigenetic ancestors are just locked in revenge for generation after generation because of the fucking Hatfields and what they did. And that when Masons introduce a prime enemy into the world, that instantly it changes the focus of everyone around. That the Hatfields aren't so bad because they're not the Freemasons. And that you would notice right away that if you wanted to somehow establish order into this conglomerate, that you would need a central figure to mount as your demon. And that every now and then, every month, if you ran that demon through the streets, all the torches from all the villagers would act as a cleansing agent for everyone there. That all the villagers would have a jubilee. It would be a jubilee of energy for their neighbor because the Hottentots are in town. And this is why the Witchfinder General was so popular. This is why the very person in America responsible for violating over 400 people, 40 of them died, insisted that vaccinations itself were a religious decision, not a medical one. That it was God that told him to do this. It wasn't science. And that the pus and boils that he pulled from the horse had the same effect as if they were pulled from a donkey, had the same effect as if they were pulled from a cow. Why? Because it had nothing to do with vaccines. It had everything to do with a man injecting, assaulting another person's body with herpes, starving them, throwing them into a barn for 6 weeks with no food, while with a bunch of other kids, seeing which ones lived, that itself would elicit an immune response. And that the second someone did that to you, your entire system would be on red alert going, what the fuck's getting ready to happen? And all of your white blood cells, all your T cells, all your B cells would be ready and looking for war. But the puritanical desire we have overrode the rational reasoning that I just gave you. That we're not able to rationally reason that that's actually what happened, because we also have this other need to feel cleansed. And the way we can feel cleansed is to demonize this virus, this invisible thing. All of these things are prana economies. Even what you say about the Masons. And keep doing it. Because I'm not here to stop victimhood. I'm here to show victimhood. I think victimhood's a good thing. I think it shows that we have compassion for ourselves. And that's very important. Because the moment we stop unleashing victimhood ourselves, that's you literally trying to save your reputation and do less work at the same time. That you are trying to honorably maintain yourself. You're trying to preserve yourself. So victimhood itself is not bad. Losing your energy without knowing it is just a waste of electricity. And I value your electricity. And if you valued your electricity even more, you would have more electricity to spend. You would be more compassionate. You would be kinder. The world would have more generosity because it would flow from your pollen. That's the only reason why. This isn't to make you feel bad because there's victimhood. Quite the opposite. That should give you all the proof you need to know we're going to make it. This is the best apocalypse ever. The Aztecs say this is the sixth sun. Sorry, it runs so late. You guys still watching? Say this is the sixth sun, and that this incarnation that we just started, that every time the world's destroyed, Quetzalcoatl does something special. That Quetzalcoatl takes our bones and mixes them with corn, so that when the next sun is given to us, the Aztecs say that each of these worlds is given a sun, that sun will react to the corn and that the memories will be there, and that you will epigenetically remember, compassionate the last apocalypse. And that right now we're seeing all these people fall to COVID, but a long time ago it was, let's pull our heart out in a ceremony because the corona's here and none of us know what to do. That we're getting better at this, not worse. And that every single apocalypse we have, people who were in the know, who epigenetically inherit this knowledge. Why? Because their epigenetic ancestors did really fucking well. And they were allowed to, they had so much energy that they were allowed to store a time capsule that would survive complete reset. It was an inheritance, wisdom is. And that the Freemasons probably inherited some knowledge. And why'd they inherit it? Because they spent so much work sharpening their stone. So good or bad doesn't matter. They have energy. And energy is the biggest teacher in nature. It shows you everything. I'm going to stop now. Thanks for being here. If you want to buy my book, it would really be awesome right now. The audiobook, it's on Audible. Check links for descriptions there. Would love it if you consider it. If you like the book, maybe leave a comment. If you don't, leave a comment too. I actually like how my books always have a very strong reaction. It's always, I really hate this book more than life itself, and I really love this book. It's the mitosis we talked about. It's all knowing. It's all showing. I'm going to show you guys the planets. But did it quit? No. Let's see here. Let's see, telescopium. That's interesting. Where's everybody today? Where is everybody today? You know what? We'll do this later. Lots of stuff happening. Starts this week. You should look out for it. All right, I'm gonna hit outro, and you guys, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.